So I'm Aaron Butler, and this is for my instructional strategy content areas video lesson, and I chose to go over the Little Rock 9. And then I've added a couple strategies to help the ELL learner, okay? So starting off, the objective, okay? The students will learn about the historical significance of the events in 1957 relating to the Little Rock 9. Make cultural connections about the implications of these events and draw opinions based upon the facts of these events. So, some essential vocabulary, kind of pre-teach, give you an idea of the lesson. So, the Brown versus Board of Education, okay, this ruling allowed that, segregated schools were not equal, which is a pretty important precedent to allowing the integration of Central High School. Little Rock Central High School is the Little Rock 9 integrated. They had that's what we learned about today. Little Rock 9 is all 9 members of African Americans that integrated Little Rock Central in 1957. Governor Faubus, he played a very important role in these events. He was the governor during that time, and he actually tried to stop the Little Rock 9 from entering the building. And President Eisenhower was the president during this time, and he actually overthrew what Governor Faubus was doing at that time. And then the 101st Airborne is who Eisenhower employed to overthrow Governor Faubus's orders. So you're going to see these topics brought up today. So as I mentioned, Brown versus Board of Education is a court case that happened in Topeka. This court ruling declared that segregated schools are not equal. The implications of this precedent allowed Little Rock Central to become an integrated school. The school had previously been all white until its decision, and it was the only one in the district at that time. So this is a picture of Little Rock Central High School. Very pretty school, as you see, very historic, as we're learning today. And until about 10 years ago, it was the largest single building school in the state. So, as I mentioned, until the Brown versus Board of Education ruling, the school had previously been all white. In 1957, the school would then be integrated by 9 Little Rock students from the city. These would forever be known as the Little Rock 9. Okay? And so the Little Rock 9 members, Mel Patillo, Carlotta Walls, Minnie Jean Brown, Elizabeth Eckford, Ernest Green, Jefferson Thomas, Terrence Roberts, Gloria Ray, and Thelma Mothershed. So the last time they were all together was in 2007 for the 50th anniversary. Since then, we've had members pass away, so that was the last time they were all together, 50th anniversary in 2007. So, let's talk about Governor Orville Faubus. So he was the governor of the state during that time, and he actually deployed the Arkansas National Guard to block the Little Rock 9 from entering the school. And that's pretty important because he decided amongst himself that he wanted to not follow through with the executive order to have integration from the court ruling. So this is where President Eisenhower comes in. So President Dwight Eisenhower, he was the president during that time, and his job was to carry out the judicial ruling. So he sent a official warning to Governor Faubus about not following through with the Supreme Court ruling. And so he deployed the 101st Airborne, which is the Army, to enforce their integration and protect the Little Rock 9. So the 101st Airborne would actually kind of do like a security guard detail on all Little Rock 9, protect them from the violent protesters. They couldn't enter the school without being verbally and physically assaulted, spit on, and that was pretty much a daily occurrence for all of them. And so the 101st Airborne was used to protect them because of how violent the protests were during that time, as many protests were during the Civil Rights era. So the integration year. As I mentioned, the 104th Airborne was sent to protect these 9 students. So the Little Rock 9 district to horrible physical and verbal abuse during the integration year. One student, Mel Patillo, even had acid thrown in her eyes at school. So obviously they needed protection because of all the dangers that they had going on during that time. And these are classmates, these were just citizens of Little Rock who were protesting the integration. Okay, so the lost year. This was the year following 1957, 1958, so the 58 through 59 school year. This is when the LRSD schools, the Little Rock School District schools, actually shut down for an entire school year. Governor Faubus signed acts that enabled him to close all Little Rock School District schools to deter integration. He actually had a plan to open some private schools during this time because they would not have to follow that initiative. So they remained closed for the entire school year, and teachers actually had to report to work every day during this time, just in case schools did become back in session. The decision to close the schools fueled more racism towards the students as blame for the school closure. So it's kind of fueled the fire towards the racial protest during that time. It's like, hey, it's your fault that that we can't go to school. So during that time, they had to go to surrounding school districts, Pulaski County, private school, to get their education for that year. So post questions. So starting off with 3 different tiers. So tier 1 question, who are the Little Rock Nine? So just simply tell me, who were they, what did they do? Tier 2, do you agree with Governor Faubus's decisions? So why or why not? And what impact do you think the Little Rock Nine made on the civil rights movement? So extension. So for homework, we're going to write a paragraph summarizing the events of the Little Rock Nine. So use your own words. Make sure you use all the main people of the story, and just kind of give a brief synopsis of what occurred during that year. And then next class we'll watch the Ernest Green story, which is a drama documentary over following Ernest Green, who's the only senior during that group, actually graduated from Little Rock Central, the only one. We're going to follow his story during that school year, and kind of gives a good visualization of what all occurred during that school year. So